Okay, so our next presenter is Angela Kabiru from Maysam's project, and she's going to talk about their experience of digitizing of archival data and collection from the Museum of Kenya. Angela, so you can unmute yourself and then share your screen, please.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Angela. We can see your screen. It's not yet in presenter. Oh, yeah, it is in presenter mode now. Perfect. Yeah. Thanks. Go ahead. Yes.
I'm just going to give you a summary of what we have been doing in terms of digitization of the collection at the National Museums of Kenya. So under the Maysom project, I have previously worked for the National Museum, so I am familiar with with most of this collection. So I'll just start by giving you a brief history of the National Museums of Kenya. The history goes back to 1910 when it was founded by the East Africa and Uganda Natural History Society. And the records we have indicate that the earliest collections were brought into the then museum in 1911, where the artifacts were delivered, by hand with, handwritten notes. And it wasn't until the 1930s that proper excavations were carried out, and detailed site descriptions were done by Mary Leakey and Louis Leakey. When the museum opened in 1930, of course, that provided a storage for the collection. The Royal Air Force carried out an aerial photography to develop the very first, the initial topo maps that we have. So I just want to give you an account of the various data that we have and the progression. So we have quite a lot of paper data. So up to now, what the archaeological sites that we have on record, I have put the number at 5,500, but the number varies because we realize that there are a lot of omissions, there are a lot of double documentations. Gazetted sites, we have about 412, and gazetted means they should be protected by law, although all archaeological sites are also protected, through the Museums and Heritage Act. The first gazetted site was gazetted in 1929. And right now we have 412. We also have eight World Heritage sites and 34 underwater sites. And just referring to what Anton was talking about, some of this, we cannot put a plus on this number because some of the gazetted sites are also in the archaeological register. Some World Heritage sites are also gazetted sites. Underwater sites are also they are not World Heritage. They are also archaeological sites. So the numbers, sort of mix and mingle. So, one site can sort of be in two different areas at the same time. So far, we have a lot of paper records for our archaeological sites, all 5,000 or 6,000 of them. We also have found that we have audio tapes, and I think this might relate to intangible data. We have not listened to them yet because we are still trying to figure out whether they can be digitized, and we have not found a way to play them yet. We have a large amount of maps that we have in the division as well. Aerial photographs can be found, but in most cases it has been discovered that some of them might be in the archives, but I think some of them may have gone away with the researchers who did research here in the 50s and the 60s. So that is a missing part of our heritage. We have found a large number of 35mm photographic slides that are currently, being digitized. But all the archaeological legacy sites, we have all the information put together either in Excel or Access spreadsheets. So those are the formats that we are dealing with right now. Now, I'll just talk briefly about how we have been dealing with the digitization of the archival paper records. And then a little bit about the scanning, which we have also been doing, and what we are doing with the creation of metadata. Now, what you see on the screen is an example of some of the site documentation that we have. And I just put this up to show you the condition of some of these sites, some of these records. If you look at the first record here, you notice that most of the fields on the form are blank. Essentially, this is the form where the researcher first documents. This is the first documentation of a site when it is reported. And so it should have all this information: latitude, longitude, functional type, cultural identity, context, environmental conditions. But as you can see, most of this information is missing. So this is not an isolated case. We have a lot of sites where we have only basic information. We don't even know where some of these sites are. Some of them are in UTM units, which is a good thing. But if you compare with the form in the middle, which has quite a lot of information, but this site, the Gogo Falls, has been visited by several researchers, so the information has been updated as time goes. And as you can see, the information has been filled in by different people in various writings and different colors. And it looks good here, but if you see the actual condition of the paper, it disintegrates very fast because it has been handled. It has been handled a lot by many people. The other type of site records that we have are the site cards. The yellow card on the top left, you can see that the collector was LSB Leakey, and it is noted here that the collection was made in 1937. Now, the name of the site is referred to as Kiambu Township. For those of you who come from Kenya and you know where Kiambu is, it could be anywhere within 20-kilometer radius of where Kiambu is. So basically, we do not have a precise location for this site. And the only collection that is noted from that site is one green bead. If you look at the bottom right-hand corner, that Montague's farm is also, we don't even have a date for when this collection was done. But you can see there's a longer list of objects that was picked up from the farm. We do not know if all the objects were picked up in one location or in different locations. My research tells me that this farm was 10,000 acres. So when you're dealing with such a large area and you don't know exactly where the objects came from, it becomes a problem because you cannot state any coordinates for this kind of information. And this is the kind of data that we have from the very early years, from the 30s into the 40s. And this brings me to one of the very interesting discussions that we've been having about what constitutes a site. If you're referring to this location where the green bead came from, do we refer to that as a site or an isolated find? And is it how do we enter that into the database if the location cannot even be found? The white card on the top right, the collector was called Taylor. This one also has no date indicated, but we can get that from the records because we have found a large amount of handwritten notes at the British Institute archives, and this refers to the Bantu project of the late 1960s. So we sort of have an idea when this was carried out. So following up with the notes, we can probably fill in some of these details that are missing. The red card at the bottom, I think, is one of the most complete ones that we have because it has everything. Sorry, it's not very clear. The objects and the location and everything that we need to fill in. So this is just to show you the variety of data that we have of different sites. Again, when we talk about collections, going back here, The white one is what we call a site card, and the yellow ones are what we call accession cards, which means every collection on the yellow card, they come in different colors. Even the red one is an accession card, has an accession number, which means it is only those sites with collections that have accession numbers. Now, according to the records, the accession record book was opened in 1958. And the picture on the right sort of shows you the initial entries on this book, and you can see the condition of the book. It is very tattered, but it's still in fairly good condition. So right now the accession collections, I think the last number is about 4,600, and that goes on increasing every year. The other kinds of data that we are material paper records that we are dealing with are shown here. We have a lot of maps which are annotated. We have other types of survey forms. We have the accession cards. We have the 35mm slides, and all the old publications are very useful when it comes to filling in some of these details, because some of these sites were published, but we do not have the basic information about them. So we are doing a lot of work looking into publications to see where we can get some of this material. We do have an annotated bibliography of Kenyan prehistoric archaeology, but it only goes up to 1981, and this has not been updated since then. Essentially, on the survey form, that is where the information should be updated, but in many cases, this has not happened. We are also using aerial photographs to georeference some of the sites that have been either marked on the photographs or that we find published in other publications. So basically, the kind of records we have at the museum are sort of in four or five separate groups. We have the ArcSites records, which is basically an Excel sheet. We have the ArcFinds records, that is in an access file. We have the accessions register, which is the paper one that I have shown you, and we have a site folder which contains all these other materials, site plans, aerial photographs, and the site catalog. And because all of this, we have tried to fit them in the existing Excel sheet. But of course, there are limitations to how much information you can put on this. But now, what we are trying to do with the Arches database is to try and put all this information together. I do not have a screenshot of the full range of fields that we are filling for the Arches database, but I can tell you it is fairly long. The tricky thing is that when we go back here, as Anton was talking about, we have to find a way to relate all these materials to a particular site. And there are so many complexities within the sites, and that is one of the challenges that we have had, because when you have to explain how sites are related to each other and materials and researchers, and it becomes a fairly complex issue. Now, some of the data issues that we have faced in the data entry, so far I'm just talking about data entry into the Excel sheet, which we are then using to upload to Arches, is that we have noticed a lot of accuracy issues, especially with positional, the position of legacy sites. I like to show this image because, as you can see, this is the sea around Mombasa, and we have 3 sites. When you map them, they show up in the middle of the ocean, and therefore there is a problem with either the coordinates or with the way the transformation was done between UTM to whatever it is that is on record. So we have been trying to correct this to see if we can get a closer, much more accurate coordinates for the sites. It works sometimes, but in some cases they are still a bit off, and that is where ground truthing comes in. There are a lot of sites that have been documented more than once. So, like the example that Anton gave, one site has different names, so it is recorded severally, but under different names. So if you do not have similar coordinates, you will not actually realize that you're dealing with one site. and therefore you count them as 5 when, you know, when in the actual sense, it might just be one site. And again, referring to the information that we have so far on the records, we have a lot of missing information. So that becomes very, very different, you know, when filling in the information, even in ArchES, uploading the information. But mostly the coordinates, even if the other information is missing, you can probably find it in other documentation. But if the coordinates are missing, you have no idea which site you're looking for. And even when we go out on the ground to ground truth or, you know, verify some sites, you have no idea where the site is. Now, the importance of having the coordinates is also because we realize that some of these sites can no longer be found. If you look at that image, if the sites were already in this built-up area here, it means the sites have already been destroyed, but we have no record. There is no clear way of knowing whether where exactly the site was. So we do not know whether it has actually been destroyed or not. And also from the very beginning, sites were recorded as points. But you know, if you're an archaeologist, you know that there is no site that is, you know, that is just a single point. It occupies, you know, space. And therefore, we do not know the actual extent in terms of these sites, and that becomes a problem when mapping the extent. So we are trying to see if we can correct some of these issues while trying to update the threats and conditions, which we have, you know, realized that, you know, have not been admitted for a long time, and therefore we do not really know the condition of some of these sites. Let me talk a little bit now about scanning. When we talk about scanning, there are a lot of standards and guidelines, because, you know, as Anton said, you have to, and also Azadeh, you have to produce data that is usable by many, you know, different people, and, you know, across different contexts, and, you know, as people can use across different, you know, for different uses. And therefore, there are certain standards and guidelines that we have chosen to employ in the digitization of our data to make them acceptable and reusable in, you know, as wide in the best way possible. There are a lot of standards that you can find online, but the ones we have chosen to we mainly refer to here in the MyASAM project come from the Archaeology Data Service and the Endangered Program Archives. And the very, very basic thing is that although we failed this test, because I think some of the scanners that we have, you know, one of our scanners is a feed scanner, and we realized that it presents a problem when you're dealing with thick paper. Scanners should ideally be flatbed, and we are trying to do this, as you know, we are trying to follow this rule as much as possible, and then we make sure that all our images are in uncompressed TIFF. I will not go into the reasons here, but I'm sure many of you have worked with TIFF, and the best thing about saving your scans as a TIFF is the ability to compress without loss of quality, which is good if you're creating a digital database. And this is just a summary of some of the things that are suggested for scanning. We have chosen to do to scan our text data with using 300 DPI, because we also tried 400, and, you know, there isn't much of a difference. But we have mainly chosen to use 300 DPI for our printed text, and 600 for photographs and maps. And this is just a sample of the maps that we have scanned. We do not do this in-house because we do not have the scanner, you know, for this sort of size. But we are using a commercial scanning agency, and we have very good maps, which must obviously be at a very good resolution, because when it comes to georeferencing, you need to be able to zoom in and out without losing some of the accuracy. Now, the site records, as I said before, they are, they come in many different colors and, and sizes, and they are a bit more tricky. But basically, when you're working with at 300 dpi, we realize that the quality is quite good. And we have been having some staff at the National Museum help us with this. So that way, and also some interns. So that way, we teach several more people how to do scanning so that they can do this on their own. We also have quite a number of images, some of which are actually very faint, but when you scan them, they actually turn out quite well. 600 dpi is what we have chosen to use. They are some of them are in several different pieces, like the one on the right. But I think that the images are turning out quite well. We are doing all this in-house, so it also gives us practice in terms of scanning, and some of the interns we have are also helping us with this. When it comes to filing and aggregation, which is also a problem with some of the data that we have, the suggestions or the recommendations are that a coding system should make retrieval easy. And going back to the question of that person who was asking about how long the appellation should be, it says that the name should be kept as short as possible. Well, yeah, when you use names for filing for your files, you should keep the name as short as possible, because long names do not necessarily add value, and I think they only make things more confusing. So the recommendations are also that you end any type of naming of your images with a numerous, which again is something we have to go back and do, because I realize that most of what we have done does not have the numeral, just in case this particular map is in two versions and then is in two copies, and then one should be 001 and the other one should be 002. And this is an example of the naming that we have had. This is the one on the left is what we have used for maps. We have done 460 maps for the national museums, and all the maps have been named. But like I said, we need to probably revisit the renaming. Now, when it comes to the sites, it is harder because the sites have so many different documentations. So what we have chosen to do is to have an appendix with a coding system for each document. A for accession card, S for site card, D for inventory sheet. And this is part of the documentation that we are creating for the site. Otherwise, this becomes confusing if you're not conversant with what we are having. So in some cases, we have up to, these are actually 10. We have more than this. So if you do not have documentation showing what it stands for, this becomes very confusing. But it sort of, shortens the name when we are for filing purposes. Now, Anton also mentioned the creation of metadata, and metadata is something we have also taken very seriously, and these are some of the suggested fields that you need when creating metadata, because you need the name of the file, a description, the creation date, media type, location, and other dates that are related to this to the object that you're digitizing. And this is just an example of the metadata that we have created for the map data set. This is all the information that appears on the map itself. But we also have, if you look down there, there's a digitization technical informant, which should include the type of machine used for digitizing this, the actor information, and also the institution, which is part of the documentation that we have chosen to include in our data set. So in summary, the numbers that we have so far are 5,500 sites for the sites in the Excel sheet, And for the scanned maps, we have 462, and probably they should probably be 3,200 individual paper records, and that is continuing. I do not have numbers for this because this also is continuing, and some of them I do not have the numbers right now. The 35 millimeter slides are being carried out. The collection is at the British Institute, and they are currently being digitized. I think they may have done up to 2,000 now. I still have to check on the numbers, but we probably have a collection of about 10,000 slides. Now, let me go back to a little bit about the national museums, because this is not the first digitization project that we have had. There have been various attempts to digitize records and heritage data, but all of them, have never, either they have never been fully completed or something happened in between. But let me talk a little bit about this one that is in the middle, the Amazon Web Services in partnership with DDD. The project was started, and the aim was to record, like they say, 10,000 records in 2D and 3D. The problem is that, and if you look at their website, they say that the DDT is enabling NMK to achieve this objective by creating an entire digital records management, collections, and archiving system on the AWS cloud. The DDD team is also digitizing the collections, including undertaking 3D imaging, photometry, geotagging, geospatial analysis, and training NMK teams. The problem is that this data cannot be found. We have tried to contact them. They still, they keep insisting that, it has been uploaded and you can download it from their website, but it cannot be found. So of the Google digitization project, you can actually get some data, but this one, which claims to have done 10,000 records, the data cannot be found. So we don't know what happened to that. And that would have been good, to find the data, because then we wouldn't have gone back to digitizing some of the items that they digitized. So some of the data management issues with the National Museums of Kenya, like in several discussions that we have had with them, is about data storage. And unfortunately, there is still no data management plan in place. And the data storage is about where to store the data. If we digitize all this data that we have, but they do not have adequate space to store the data, what happens and where will the data be stored? And also, various discussions about data ownership, which the discussion is still ongoing, so I won't go into that. Now, I was looking at the NMK strategic plan, where they say that they indicate that they are going to undertake an audit of current virtual space in use and projected requirements in order to accommodate digitized data such as ours. I am not aware that that has been done. It will probably be ongoing, and they should let us know if they are in a position to keep all the data that we digitize. And again, there's a lot of talk about what should be digitized, digitization software, and the value it adds, and digitization equipment, how to train staff to digitize. So our project is squarely meeting this this demand, this request to have databases digitized. Because there's a great demand. A lot of NMK's records, not only archaeology, a lot of our records are, in paper form. And if something should happen before this, all the digitization is carried out, I'm very afraid we are going to lose a lot of data. So I think we are squarely, we are actually helping NMK to meet their mandate, and I hope we can finish this well. Thank you.
Thanks, Angela, for the great presentation and kind of talking about all different issues and aspects while you're doing your digitization, scanning, and validating or auditing work.